Hi everyone, welcome to the second Evolution of Gaming event. I'm your host for the evening, Michael Hobson from Three Beards. Sorry, the last time we discussed the sort of evolution of gaming from the past to the present. This time around we're going to discuss the evolution of gaming from now into the future. So yeah, we've got a fantastic panel here tonight. I'll just introduce them briefly and they'll let us know a bit about themselves. From left to right, we have Julia Hardy, video games and tech journalist from Sky News Sunrise. We have Dan Maher, who worked on Sony, Xbox, and now has a podcast with Explosive Allen Productions. We have Haitham Rowley, IT director of Square Enix. And we have Louise Shannon, curator of digital at the Victorian Album Museum. So, to start off, I'm just going to ask you to sort of introduce yourselves a bit more, tell us a bit more about what you do, and let us know, one, the first game you ever played, and two, what you're playing now.
Okay, so I had a bit of a weird journey into coming into gaming. I got a job on a music channel on Sky, as you do, just randomly, and they ended up having a show on there that was going to be sort of like games and music, and it was also about like film, and I was into games, so we ended up kind of just reviewing lots of different stuff, and that was sort of my first little step into coming into gaming. And then I've had lots of different sort of presenting jobs over the years. But I suppose when I kind of went full force into gaming I was hosting a show called Game Face, which was on Bravo, which was this wonderful yet bizarre Lincoln Clip show, which had oranges being juiced behind my head for some reason. I never found out why. If anyone ever saw it, it was really bizarre. So I kind of got into it that way. And then I've had lots of different freelance jobs. If any of you guys are thinking about going into gaming, one freelance job is never, ever, ever enough. You need at least 6, 5, something like that. You need a few of them on the go. So I've been kind of doing that. I've recently started, at Sky News, doing like a weekly sort of gaming and tech thing, which I do, which is sort of part of Sky, like Swipe and Sunrise, which is quite fun. I probably most recently just finished a job for BAFTA, which was cool. I was hosting all the content for that, for the challenge show, which was fun. It was long. I drank some really weird cocktails that made me feel a bit ill, but that was good fun. So the job's quite varied. It's quite interesting. Yeah, so wait, what was it? What am I playing? What was I? I've lost where I'm going.
First game.
First game.
And what you're playing now.
First game, I think probably I got really super excited about was probably Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It was the first game I think I ever was genuinely like, oh my God, this game is coming out. The first of many games that I got a bit excited about. And it was, one of those days where, of course, you couldn't save your games. My parents wouldn't let me have a games console. They also wouldn't let me get my ears pierced. So I think all of these things, as a parent, you should take note of, that maybe just let your kid do that if they're quite stubborn. And, you'd like play it from start to finish. You had to leave the console on, go pause it, go make a sandwich, come back, try and finish it. You could never do it. It was always really difficult. So that was the first game that I ever really, really played. The one that probably got me into gaming, like in a really serious way, was a point-and-click game called Day of the Tentacle, which I played with my friend Farah, whose parents let her play video games, again. They also let us have dominoes and drink Coca-Cola. It was really exciting going around her house. And played that game from start to finish, called up the tip line. Her dad was really lax. He didn't seem to care. It cost her a fortune. You'd be like stuck. What do I do with the fork and the clown? I don't know.
This is before Google as well, right? So.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. You had to call up some basically American 0898 number, and it would cost
Or you could ask Games Master.
Well, Patrick Moore was quite busy. I'm not really sure he knew what was going on 99% of the time.
The Games Master knew all, Julie.
Mainly because he probably read it from an autocue. But yeah, anyway, so that was the one that really got me into gaming. Currently, I am between games. I've just finished Metal Gear Solid, the latest really, really short...
Zeros?
Ground Zero, sorry. The very, very short game. I've just finished playing that. I'm toying with playing Dark Souls 2, but I can be quite a ragey gamer. I don't want to destroy my lounge. It took me 3 days to cable it. I don't want to throw my TV out the window, and I feel like that might happen. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't quite decided. I've still got my pile of shame. I've been playing some Titanfall as well, because that's pretty fun too. So yeah. Let's move on to you before I just keep talking.
That's everything. Potted history, career advice.
I cried once at a fairground when I was 12.
Me and my games and my life have been very kind of closely intertwined throughout. So, my first experience was being shoved in front of a Pac-Man machine when I was on holiday in France, just so my parents could get drunk and leave me to play Pac-Man. And then they carried on doing that at home by buying me a Spectrum, just letting me do that in perpetuity. So, yeah, I've been gaming for 31 years now. I don't think there could have been any other career path that I really could have taken. Everything I did was geared towards getting into the games industry, and I've now been in the industry for 13 years. So, yeah, and right now I am playing... I've got into Dark Souls finally. It's my 4th attempt, but now I'm really deeply stuck into it. And if anyone is playing it or has played it, I'm currently at An Orlando, and it's hard. And that's it. Much shorter.
Exactly. I'm not sure how to live up to the first story there. So for me, it's quite a journey, I suppose. We talk about gaming. I've kind of been in the gaming industry now for about 15, 16 years or so. Although some days I kind of look back and think, how the hell did I get here? I come from the IT industry, of all things. And just to scare you even more, from banking and insurance, which is scary. I'm not that old, by the way, but I'll try not to tell you my first game that I ever played. So, you know, my kind of history is like this. I started up in the city working for a bunch of banks and insurance companies, and sort of reached a point in IT where I thought, you know what, I really don't want to do this anymore. And I can remember speaking to the agency at the time, saying to them, I'm in London, get me south. I really want to go to the coast and work somewhere by the sea. Brighton will do. And they said, well, we've got this company in Wimbledon called IDOS. And I went, okay, what's that mean? IDOS, what do? They do games. And, you know, I was a massive film fan, and I thought, well, films, games, we'll give it a go. So I started as a contractor. Now, I for those of you who can remember Gordon Gekko days, but three-piece suits from the city, I turned up in IDOS my first day in a three-piece suit, sitting on a bench not so dissimilar to this, waiting for the IT manager. I was contracting as a consultant, waiting for the IT manager to come and get me. And I was there at 9:15, because that's what you did. And at 11:15, this guy came out in bare feet, shorts and a T-shirt, and said, "Do you want to come through?" And there I felt so out of place. But I've got to tell you, I just didn't look back, to be honest with you. The 7-8 years or so at IDOS, if you know Square Enix, we've been through a number of iterations as IDOS and SCI and into Square Enix now. But my word, I think there's a question you were going to ask me with regards to getting into gaming. Is it easy? Is it hard? We'll talk about that. But to be honest with you, to find myself in the gaming industry, my word, I was just it was a blessing in disguise. The IDOS days were rock and roll, absolutely rock and roll, great fun. Tomb Raider, my God, I think I turned up on the second Tomb Raider at Christmas time, and I'd never seen anything like it. Sales director was. I think at one point the CEO was giving a piggyback round the office because Tomb Raider had just done some silly amount of money, and coming from my world, it was definitely something new. And then sort of moving through with SCI and now with Square Enix, I've got to say it's great fun. First game, I thought about this. I'll give my age away. I just have to, I suppose. But I'm 10 or 11 years old, and the Atari console comes out, and I'm playing Pong. And I'm sure there's some of you here that can remember those days. If you squint hard enough. But to be honest with you, there's a bunch of irony here as well. I think the first game that I really played and finished, any of you that are from my part of the world, I'm South London, Carshalton, there's a place called Westcroft Sports Centre, and as a kid, I used to stand at this arcade machine playing Space Invaders. And I clocked it, and I was probably the first out of our group of kids, the first person to clock Space Invaders, and it was a massive deal. It was a big deal. I can remember that moment, to be honest with you.
I didn't actually realise that was a clockable game, to be honest.
I finished the game, and I can remember this date that to score maximum points on the spacecraft, you had to have, it was 22 shots, and a 23rd shot would give you maximum points on the mystery, and then from then on, I forget what it was, but I just couldn't leave this flipping thing alone. The games I'm playing now, I I have a 5-month-old baby, so the main game is sleeping. But my other game, the other game I've got, I don't know. I seem to have reverted back to. I've got a Nexus 7. I'm playing Tetris. I'm traveling. You're sitting on. I pick up Tetris and away I go. When I'm at home, I'm trying to finish Tomb Raider. Currently, I mean, I'm not just going to say this because I work for Square Enix and Eidos, but it's awesome. I just can't put the flipping thing down. But it's in small iterations, and that's you probably can see the type of game player I am. I pick a game up for an hour and put it down again, and then run off and do something else.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Louise?
So I'm Louise. I'm Curator of Digital Design at the V&A. I feel a little bit of an interloper. The amount of experience on this panel is slightly making me quiver. But I have been at the museum for donkey's years, for a long time now. And I took up a new position as Curator of Digital Design in January 2013. So we've been there just a little over a year. And the kind of going into that job, it was a signal from the museum, which was kind of getting serious about collecting digital design. And that ranges from video games to websites to all sorts of kind of iterations. The first acquisition we made was the 3D printed gun by Cody Wilson. And we attempted to collect the hardware, the gun, and the software, the STL files for 3D printing. To cut a really long story short, we collected a replica of the gun. We, of course, just 3D printed one ourselves instead of trying to import a 3D printed gun from Texas. Just had my second license approved. But we can't collect the STL files from Cody Wilson because they're currently property of the US government. But they are publicly available on the Pirate Bay, for instance. But as a kind of anecdote, it kind of gives you an indication into the types of problems a museum that's been going since 1852 has when trying to think about digital design. We have been kind of commissioning and exhibiting digital for a long time, really. I was involved in the UVA's first commission in the garden. I co-curated a show with Shane Walter of 1.0 called Decode, which was the first kind of big investigation into the museum about digital as a process, as a kind of material and a technique for new production methods. But we weren't really collecting. We collected a few things from Decode, and they went into the computer art collection. So we have the National Emerging Collection of Computer-Generated Art and Design, as well as the Digital Design Collection, which seems a bit more snappier. So things I'm currently working on at the moment, I'm working on a video games exhibition, which, although 2017 probably sounds like an age away, it's actually not that far in the museum terms. We're already possibly a bit behind, but I'm co-curating that with Alex Wiltshire, who I'm sure you all know as the former editor of Edge magazine. And really what we'll be thinking about that is what's the kind of different type of visitor experience in a video game exhibition. The last thing we want to do actually is result to a kind of gameplay within the exhibition space. We want to resist that. We think that's been done really well by many people. The Barbican show, for instance, was fantastic for that. But actually, we think the best thing would be for people not to play games in space, but to start to understand the process of design within video games, which we think hasn't really been kind of tackled. And that could be anything from engines to product design in video games. We always cite, Batman's mobile phone. That's interface design. So we should talk about that, and we should talk about sound design and kind of characters and all these things. And at the moment, we're working. Our kind of working title is Headshot. So a philosophy of video games. So taking things from video games that have influenced wider culture, wider kind of contemporary culture. We think that would only come from video games. My first game I ever played, I think it was either Booty or Jet Set Willy, either them, and I'm really ashamed to say this one, the game that I really got into with my sister was Leisure Suit Larry. Really embarrassed, but it was the game that, it was the influence, I think I've even gone red, the influence of my older brother and the kind of words Ken sent me, the kind of password that you had to use to get in. I'm ashamed to say that that's the game that really got me going. And at the moment, because we're thinking about types of games, I'm kind of dipping in between quite a lot, but probably the one I've spent a bit of time on is Limbo recently.
Cool. Well, now we've got to know each other. Let's dip into the discussion. So we're going to talk about 4 different main topics tonight. We'll discuss them on the panel here, and then we'll do a bit of Q&A as we go, as opposed to waiting to the end, so you guys can get some questions in as well. The first thing I wanted to discuss with you guys is to do with sort of getting a career in the industry. So obviously, 3 out of our 4 panel here work in the industry. It'd be interesting to hear your views on how to best do that, really. So obviously, journalism is one of the easiest ways to get into the industry, I suppose, with things like YouTube, people being able to stream their games, and people getting paid to do that now with advertising. Obviously, Julia and Dan, you've got quite a history in the games journalism industry. What would you say to someone looking to get into that, and how would you best prepare them for the journey?
I think it's probably the question I get asked most, more than anything else ever, really. It's and the funny thing is, if you talk to most people within the industry, it's one of those things where you're like, oh, like you can't use me as an example because everyone's always got like a really odd way that they got into the industry. And like I was saying before, it was sort of through doing TV presenting, but then kind of came around to it. But I do think it's a very, very different time now, and there's not sort of all these barricades and walls between the people who make games and the people who write about games. It's very, very easy to get in contact with people, and there are so many people who are putting on events like yourselves where you can kind of go and sort of meet the makers effectively. Probably the best advice is to find someone doing what you want to do, and follow them on Twitter or go to events, go and meet them. And there are so many platforms at the moment where you can practice and get good at it, like, blogging, or if you want to get into sort of video content or commentary, obviously there's YouTube. YouTube's a very strange beast within itself, but wonderfully fantastic. And there's a lot of very talented people and some untalented people as well, but a lot of very talented people who do very well. I mean, it really is hard work, and the ones who do succeed do put in a lot of hours to do it. And there's ways of kind of, bringing up, unfortunately, it does come down to things like Twitter followers a little bit as well. So if you've got an interesting voice, you'll naturally find that people will want to listen to it, and thereby you get kind of more Twitter followers, and you get to talk to people more and just connect. And once you're sort of, kind of got your foot a little bit in the door, probably the next best advice is working in gaming. There's literally, for me, there isn't really a divide between my social life and my work life. They're basically the same thing. Like some of my closest best friends I've met through games. I hang out with them. I've got one of them living at my house at the moment. There is a complete blur between that. And going to all of these events, the best way you'll ever find out about jobs is, it's quite a small journalistic community, to be fair. Pretty much everyone knows everyone. And if you kind of put the feelers out that you're looking for work, people will tend to come back and say, oh, I've heard about something here, I've heard about something there. You pretty much just have to throw yourself head first into the whole industry and let it consume your life.
I mean, you say it's one of the easiest ones to get into. I think it's the easiest one to claim that you're a part of.
Yes.
That's the difference. Is like everyone can set up a blog or a website and say, I'm a games journalist now, and it's like, well, not really. It's like, I've never claimed to be a games journalist. I've always been in corporate editorial up until recently, like starting my own business, and I've never been ashamed of the fact that I worked in corporate editorial, because I was always trying to bring an element of credibility to that. But further to Julia's point, like a big part of getting into games writing, especially, it is a very nepotistic field. It can feel quite elitist and feel like a little kind of club in that regard, which makes it very difficult to get into in that regard. And the kind of democratization of that through the online space, through video, through written editorial online on blogs, etc., means, yes, it's a lot easier to get your work out there, but it makes it even harder for you to get your work noticed, because now you're not just competing with a small group of publications, you're competing with thousands upon thousands of other writers doing exactly the same thing. So the best advice I can give is also to find your niche now, because gaming is so broad that if you're just going to be trying to run a site that is just running the same old news stories and reviews, it's like you're not going to beat VG247 or IGN or Eurogamer. You've just got to knock that on its head. You've got to find another angle for it, and that's why in the video space, things like Yogscast and that have been doing things that at the time that they started up were like nothing that those sites were doing. They were very much pioneers in that field. So you've got to continue to occupy that mindset of like, how can I pioneer? How can I find my space in doing it?
It's about like finding a strong voice as well.
Yeah.
It's like if you can't compete with all these big kind of news sites that have like, huge staff and whatever, it becomes more and more important, what your voice is and having a really strong opinion. At least you get debate going, right or wrong. I mean, you'll get some flack for it online. Obviously, people will disagree with you because no one is more passionate than someone who's into games. It's quite terrifying. But at least, you're kind of getting a debate going, and that's the only way you can really compete, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting, listening to you guys talk, because I'm kind of on the other side of the fence. I've sort of come from the engineering background to the kind of platform part of gaming, if that makes any sense. My roles, throughout my gaming career have been traditional IT. So, and not so many moons back, it was just really console gaming, I suppose, PC gaming. That's where we were. Now what I'm seeing is, traditionally, if you wanted to get into games, especially in our world, you'd start as a QA staff. You'd come and test games, and my God, I've got some great friends that are now executive producers on titles, some really well-known titles who started in QA. And good on them, because my word, that is the amount of people that come up and said, I really want to test games. I'm like, yeah, after about 20,000 hours of the same game, you really want to just cry, because you're just bleeding from the eyes and you want to go home. But,
well, people say they always go like, I want to go QA so I can play games all day. So, no, you play broken games all day.
It's a tough one. And then you kind of move on now where the industry's changed, because we've moved into free-to-play gaming, which for my world now, I've sort of parked sort of IT over that side, and now looking at sort of online infrastructure and architecture for games, which is a different discussion. So the types of people that are coming to me and asking, how do I get into gaming, they're engineers, they're architects, they're just come back from GDC. I mean, it's Geeksville. I actually feel at home. It's brilliant. I'm been walking around for years now thinking, these are really smart people that understand gaming as well as the architecture.
And on that note, really, I mean, do you think we're in a bit of a golden age of gaming in the way that, anyone in their bedroom can now, make a game, put it on Steam Greenlight, Xbox Live Indie, and, Kickstarter, for example, like Oculus Rift was a Kickstarter project. Do you think that kind of removal of the barrier of the publisher, it's had a positive and a negative effect, would you say? Like, kind of in the way that, it's allowed and empowered people to get their thing out there, but at the same time, it's created a bit of a lot of noise, shall we say?
But I think it is incredibly positive. I think that any way that sort of makes it a bit more democratic, where anyone can sort of do it. And I remember like my brothers used to sit at home making awful games, just terrible games. But it's something that they got really, really into. They're really, really passionate about. They talked about with their friends, and anything that can kind of excite a generation, the younger generation, to actually get involved in it. And if the best way of learning is just through doing and being able to put stuff out there and getting feedback and improving what they're doing, and maybe it'll have such a big effect that in sort of like 5 years' time we're going to have an even better industry in this country. Admittedly, yes, it does make it slightly flooded. There is an awful lot of terrible stuff like some of my brother's games out there, but I think that's not really that much of a negative to really not warrant doing it. I think.
I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask was how games are going to kind of continue to cement themselves into our daily lives. I mean, we've all got a relative who probably shunned the word gamer and said, "Oh, you're a dirty recluse." But then, sat and played Farmville. So, everyone's a gamer nowadays, but, whether it's on a mobile or on a Facebook game. Do you think like gamer is still a dirty word? Like, is it still considered something that's bad?
I'm kind of opposed to gamer as well, because to me now, gamer represents a kind of subset of player. Like TV has viewers, radio has listeners, gaming has gamers. Like gaming has players, people who play. It's the verb to play, not to game. And I think gamers is in itself kind of a dirty word, because to me, it represents the hostile subset of people that you're confronted with when people go online and go, Christ, everyone's really toxic here. And the people that you get on YouTube comment boards, they're gamers. You know, the people that populate forum boards and things like that.
The ones that have all effed your mum, basically.
Yeah. You know, my mum's been about it by all accounts, but but yeah, I mean that to me is it. Is like I am a player of games, and gamers is obviously a very convenient shorthand now. But I think that word now has such a stigma attached to it that I think even people who are now playing Candy Crush and Farmville and whatever they're playing on their phone still wouldn't describe them as such because they associate it with their teenage son who they've seen playing Call of Duty and just like screaming foul language at people. And it's like, oh, that's a gamer.
Yeah. Do we need a rebranding, do you think, then? Is that what we need?
We need a PR image makeover.
There's enough PRs. They should be able to rustle something up.
But I think also part of the reason for that is, coming from a museum, video games doesn't really have a cemented place in design history. So it's kind of been skirted around the issue a little bit in museums and in kind of temporary exhibitions. But what we, and it's not just a kind of PR spiel, but I think what we're really hoping to do is cement that within a wider context of design history. And I think when people would come to somewhere like the V&A, they may go to the medieval and Renaissance galleries and expect that, and they may not expect to see a selection of contemporary video games. And the way that we're thinking about the exhibition at the moment is, a kind of a 16-year-old player with his parents, and him or her acting as the kind of explainer for these terms and these kind of philosophies that are only present in video games. And hopefully by doing that, we'll help to relate that back to kind of sculpture or to, we have paintings, we have photography, we don't collect film, but we have a kind of massive collection of applied art and design, and we think that really sits in. So I think gradually when that happens and it's in a kind of broader cultural sphere, I think it will be, I guess people, like you say, will fess up a bit more.
To change tack slightly, with things like digital purchasing now, which is becoming more possible due to bigger storage, faster internet connections, allowing us to download games via the internet. I mean, I pulled down maybe 10 or 15 games from my Steam library the other day, and it took a couple of hours to download what was probably 200 gigs. So it's definitely getting there now. Maybe on consoles, we're not quite there yet.
No, not so much. Like patches day one, Xbox One, like Forza, huge. You've only got like 500 gigabytes. It's like that thing. Yeah, it's going to just be full within about 2 minutes. I don't think we're getting the right way,
there, yeah.
But I don't think we're quite there yet. And bearing in mind that my internet is fairly temperamental at the best of times. I don't think everyone has like that.
How far off do you think we are from sort of seeing the end of physical discs and hello to online wallets of games, if you like?
Very. No, you walk into a music shop, people are still buying vinyl, people are still buying CDs. They're not big industries, but there's still a market for them. Look at the switch over to digital TV, how long that actually took to communicate and ensure that the majority of the population were on TVs. There's always going to be a big chunk of people who aren't at the front of all these technical innovations. So I don't think for most, a great chunk of kind of casual consumers of gaming, that the retail space is going to be completely abandoned in favour of a completely digital marketplace. I think we underestimate how much is still generated from physical media. The fact, for example, that Ground Zeroes was available as a retail game shouldn't have been available as a retail game, because I think that was part of the reason it ramped up the cost. But it shows that Konami, for example, still see a lot of value in distributing it through that stream as well. So yeah, I think progress will be slower than most of us would like. But by the same token, as you say, you're already doing that on Steam. Yeah. Those methods already exist. We've got things like PS Now on the horizon as well. So the means are there for people that want it. I just don't think it's necessarily in everyone's interest to abandon physical media as quickly as some would have it.
What about trading?
Yeah, trading. I mean,
I think MCV, either this was it this month or last month, was saying that Walmart now is rolling out their trade-in model. So they're just about to do it to 3,100 stores through North America.
I think didn't Xbox just go back on their word again about the whole family sharing thing? And I don't know.
So it's weird. I just got Office 365, for example. My wife just bought Office 365, got an annual license, cloud-based Office, brilliant. But then you get a 5-device model, same as you did with iTunes, stuff like that. You know, that's the way forward on the digital side. I think at least you can share it between devices and between family members and let everyone in the household play it. That's fine. But the trade-in side of things. The reason that shouldn't be abandoned, this is going back to my working class roots, is that I was selling my previous console to buy the next console. I was selling my old games to buy the new games. All this talk of digital and not allowing trade-in, that is pure elitism on the hardware and manufacturers and publishers side, because they don't take into account there's a big audience of people who live on the breadline, who don't have a lot of money. Doesn't mean they should be denied the opportunity to play video games. And being able to buy second-hand games is sometimes people's only means of getting hold of those games. So they need to consider it from a social perspective as well as an economic one.
Interesting. Right, let's change again. Let's talk hardware. Right. So first of all, what are your opinions on the new generation of consoles? The new release of hardware, the PS4, the Xbox One. It does appear to be a bit behind what could currently go into that machine. So, it feels like they're kind of selling dumbed down consoles where they could have put much better equipment in there.
I don't know if I'd say that about the PS4, because everything I've played has been just ridiculously slick so far. The struggles that Xbox One are facing are probably tantamount. I mean, people are very quick to forget that when it was the other way around, PS3 was the console that was incredibly difficult to do, and every time you got a Digital Foundry article on Eurogame, it was always the Xbox 360 version's better, and now it's the other way around. PlayStation learned their lesson. But the problem is, consoles can always have better technology in them. They can always do that, but it's always about stability and cost effectiveness. If you're going to be mass producing something that's got to last X number of years and has gradually got to kind of depreciate in manufacture value and can ultimately depreciate in retail value as well, you've got to use kind of established, stable, reliable, cheaper technology. The media and so on and so forth are kind of culpable of a degree of bringing the kind of debate of whether we're being undersold to prominence kind of artificially, because whether games were displayed in a certain resolution, etc., at a certain frame rate, just weren't considerations, not even like 5 years ago. And now it's suddenly overtaking the actual quality of the games. I mean, let's face it, neither console has really anything that makes them worthwhile. Titanfall, arguably, but even that feels like a half-done game. My big problem with both consoles at the moment is that I'm playing my 360 and my PS3 and my PS Vita far more than I'm playing either of those consoles right now. You're getting stuff like Infamous Second Son, which has arrived in this, this is the system seller. No, it's not. It's a deep...
That's a purely content-driven decision.
It's a deeply shallow, but, very, very beautiful game. The kind of game you expect to come out at this stage of a new hardware generation. Let's start talking at the end of this year.
Haitham, you got any thoughts?
I mean, for me, the PS4 looks awesome. It just looks great. And I think as a console, as a piece of tech, it's fast, quick. I mean, GPUs are pretty awesome. I mean, I think I've read, just from memory now, it's like 8 or 10 times quicker than the PS3. But to be honest with you, for me, it really comes down to the content, and I'm still firing up my Xbox 360. That's just how it is. I mean, we've got them, we've got them in our offices. Am I going over there and thinking, I'll fire up the PS4 and the Xbox One and play to my heart's content? I'm not really doing that at the moment. Maybe when Halo 5 comes out, possibly I'll go and play a lot more. But no, I mean, really, PS4 looks awesome. I mean, it really does.
Yeah, and similarly, my interests are kind of in content, really. I think the Science Museum collects the physical consoles, and I don't think we will start doing that, actually. I think we'll just be focusing on the games themselves, whether they're, on a physical realm or in the kind of digital. So I've less been kind of concentrating on that, actually, more of the kind of game and maybe PC-based, actually.
So you're more to do with software nowadays then?
Yeah.
So I bought a Wii from eBay recently, secondhand purely so I could download Zelda: A Link to the Past through the Retro Store. Not so I could use any of the new Wii newfangled software, but purely so I could play a game from the 90s on that Wii. and then discovered the new 3DS game, Zelda. What's the title?
Link Between Worlds.
Link Between Worlds is pretty much the same game.
And it's phenomenal.
It's a fantastic game. But yeah, I've yet to really play the Wii at all for its intended purpose.
So it's a Wii U you bought, or a Wii?
A Wii, yeah.
The only good game on the Wii is House of the Dead Overkill with a hand cannon. Just so you know. That's brilliant.
Okay, that's the only good game on the Wii?
Only good game.
Not Super Mario Galaxy 1 and
No.
2, or Xenoblade,
No.
or, yeah, okay.
No, just
Fine,
that one.
Told.
That sort of wraps it up, really. Before we sort of close, I'd just like to ask each of you what you're most looking forward to in terms of gaming. What's coming up?
I guess, yeah, for me it's got to be virtual reality. The Witcher 3, I did mention that, I think, several times before. Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much it, really, for me.
I think for someone who's complaining so much about Nintendo, I'm looking forward to X, Super Smash Brothers, Mario Kart 8, Bayonetta 2, so basically every exclusive on the Wii U will be incredible.
Oh, The Evil Within.
Oh, that's the other one
I
I've
wanna
got, The
play
Evil
that.
Within, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be
Shinji
messed
Mikami
up.
doing a straight-up horror again
it's gonna be
should be
brilliant.
incredible.
I'm gonna suck at it.
And what else did I mention earlier? Alien Isolation as well.
That does sound good. Yeah.
I'm going to be boring. Halo 5.
Oh.
I'm going to be even more boring and say I'm really looking forward to working on this research project at the museum. So actually bringing games into the museum. So we're starting an AHRC-funded project in 3 or 4 weeks' time. So it's the first with Abate. So it's the first kind of proper workshop. So we're starting it really, really soon. That's what I'm kind of most excited about, is really helping to describe the process of games design.
Awesome. And for me, it's probably going to be the next episode of The Wolf Among Us. Again, thank you, Interaction. Thank you, Internap. Thanks to our amazing panel tonight. Give it up for the panel, guys. And thank all of you for coming along.